Hello, welcome to Football-Oranje podcast 97. We're here to talk about Dutch football in the English language. I'm Michael Statham. I'm joined by Mike Bell, who's a Football-Oranje founder. It has been a dramatic final day of the Eredivisie. We had the deciders for the relegation battle today. We know who's going to be in both the European and the relegation playoffs. Of course, the title did go to Ajax before the final day, but we'll be discussing that, much else besides with the Eredivisie final day. And little later on, we'll be discussing Louis van Gaal's latest Netherlands squad, the call-ups. Some players in there were surprises. I don't think Mike's too happy about a couple of those. But also, what can we expect from the 4 games coming up for the Netherlands? I think it's a great little international period to have right at the end of the season. We get to check out a few things, even though there's not a Euros or a World Cup to come this summer at least. Of course, we are only, how many months now? 6 months away from the beginning of the World Cup. So, yeah, plenty to discuss for the Netherlands too. If you are listening to us on SoundCloud or iTunes, you can give us a like there, give us a follow over there. But if you're watching on YouTube, great. You can check us out on all 3 of those platforms. There's a website too, football-oranje.com, for everything Dutch football. So, Mike, final day. We had the decider for the relegation battle today. Fortuna Sittard scraping a 1-0 win at NEC Nijmegen to stay up. And Sparta winning at Heracles. It was a surprise to see Heracles drop into the relegation playoff. And Willem II, despite winning 3-0, were relegated.
Yeah, it's a strange day when you always get that towards the end of the season where the relegation teams seem to turn up in form, and a day where all 3 at the bottom win. It's just a shame for Willem II that they battered Utrecht, but just results elsewhere went against them. And yeah, just over the course of the season, they've not been good enough. They've not replaced key players that they lost last summer, and it's been a club that went in decline over the past season. And this shows you that it's so tight between the bottom 3 and all the way up to probably 8th. That going into the past couple of weeks, it could have been any of 5 or 6 clubs that got dragged into it, and then you're seeing 2 sort of established Eredivisie clubs with Pexvolle and Willem II going down, which is a surprise to me. What I wouldn't have said probably either of those before the start of the season. You wouldn't have said that Cambuur, Go Ahead Eagles and NEC would have so comfortably stayed up as well. And for Heracles, such a steady mid-table Eredivisie side over the past few years, to get dragged into a relegation playoff is a bit of a shock. Their manager got so much praise for what he's done in the past couple of seasons, and he's leaving to take over at Groningen after this season, and he could be leaving having gotten Heracles relegated. It's pretty crazy, but maybe that's something that doesn't help these clubs, the fact that they announced so far before the end of the season their managers are leaving, and then maybe they switch off some of their players, because we've known for months that the likes of Kies van Vonderen's leaving Go Ahead Eagles to take over at Heerenveen. We know that the Groningen manager's leaving. We know that Heracles' manager's leaving, and some of these clubs have absolutely nosedived, especially like Groningen, and it probably doesn't help these clubs that they announce these things so far apart. But yeah, for me, it is a shock to see Willem II go down, but they haven't been good enough this season, so they can't really say it's not been deserved. And yeah, it's going to be tight to see if Heracles can stay up, because there's some good sides in that relegation playoff, like Excelsior and ADO Den Haag. So their safety isn't guaranteed, especially without someone like Kai Sirius who's still injured up front, and they lost obviously Rai Voet, their most important player earlier in the season. So yeah, they look in big trouble. So 3 pretty big established Eredivisie clubs all going down would be a shock to this season.
You were right there pointing out all the managers leaving early in this season, and I think it has impacted some of those mid-table clubs. Groningen in particular, under Danny Buis, have lost the last 7 games of the season. Such an established Eredivisie club that nearly got dragged into that relegation battle themselves for much of this season. Had a revival. Danny Buis said he was moving on, and then they lost all those games. I think the quality level overall in the mid-table and lower Eredivisie table areas has declined this season. But lots of those relegation-threatened teams, they weren't quite as bad as I think we portrayed some of them at the beginning of the season. They did pull out some big wins for them, beating Utrecht 3-0 today. That was a bit of a shock. But they fought to the end, and Fortuna also won, fighting for those results. Sparta Rotterdam as well. I think what actually you said about relegation teams managers and the mid-table teams having the managers sort of known they're moving on too quickly. For them to maybe change their manager a little bit too late, because it was Kevin Hoffman that came in, and actually in the end they took, I think it was 10 points in their final 4 home games, and it wasn't enough, and they still went down. Another one as well was Sparta Rotterdam. Hank Fraser, I suppose it wasn't really a sacking for him. He just decided to leave because they sacked his assistant manager, and he said, "Well, I don't want to stick around then if he's going." So Fraser sort of left, and it worked in their favour because Maurice Stein came in and kept them up. They won some points really late on in the season. I think it was a shock to see some established Eredivisie teams go down, but it's not exactly a bad thing for the league in a way. It shakes at some of the teams that think that they're safe, that they can just get by on a shoestring budget in mid-table. That actually that won't work, and you will get relegated if you don't have enough, because the new sides that come up are lively. They have players that want to play well at the top level that haven't played there before. So they're going to give an extra little bit, aren't they? And that's happened this season with NEC, Camber, Go Ahead. Plus the fact they're actually coached by some decent managers as well. Yeah, looking ahead to next season, I hope that we see a couple of teams either spend a little bit of money or take a chance at some young players abroad. And that hopefully pulls them up the table a bit more and gives them a financial asset in the future. I'm thinking already of Heerenveen. Got Amin Sarr, who arrived for a big fee already in January. But if he now hits the ground running next season, he will go for millions and make that club some money that they'll need to reinvest back into the club. It was a dramatic final day, though, and really, really, really enjoyable. The Eredivisie never fails to entertain us. And I think it's anyone's guess, really, who gets relegated at the relegation playoffs, but also the European playoffs. For a while, I would have said I was at Alkmaar, but they've been so poor recently that maybe it won't be them. Utrecht and Vitesse have been okay, kind of mediocre. But out on their day, could beat anyone in those playoffs. Yeah, I just don't think it'll be Heerenveen, to be fair. I think they were quality below the rest of those teams in the European playoffs. Mike, do you tell me more, though, what you thought about Ajax this season? They're crowned Eredivisie champions. We need to take our hat off to them. There was no drama on the final day. We did it in midweek against Heerenveen, the 5-0 win. What has happened to them since February? I really want to get to the bottom of it, because I've written a fair bit about it, how it might have been Mark Overmars, the defence suddenly went awry. Erik ten Hag being rumoured to go to Manchester United. Did that have an impact? Their Champions League exit? Was it just everything all together? They did manage to win the Eredivisie title in the end, but they lost the Dutch Cup and they got knocked out of Europe far too early.
Yeah, I think that when you look at what could have been for the season, it's not exactly been a great campaign for Ajax, and they really made it difficult on themselves, because they really should have won the league at a canter, and they didn't. And if I was a PSV fan, I'd be saying, we only finished a couple of points behind them. Look at that decision that happened against Feyenoord. That was the key one.
I do agree with you there, but I actually rest a few players today. Could that have made a difference? But I do agree that penalty against Feyenoord was not a penalty.
Ajax did rest a few today, but I mean, Kenneth Taylor would have started. It would have been maybe Mizraoui over Rensch. Probably Regier wouldn't have played. Could have had a couple, but it would have been a couple out anyway. So like Anthony, Martinez, they would all been out, so that could have had an effect. And Vitesse always play, always give Ajax a tough test. So if there was something relying on that game, maybe it would have went the way it did, and it could have been anything. But I think we were robbed of a very, very exciting last day by that decision by VAR, which was a horrific decision. But you got to say Ajax over the season deserved it. I think that they have been the strongest side in the Eredivisie this season, but there's just some things that where you expected them to win games, they didn't, and they seemed to just take the ball off after the ball in a few games. They lost against some teams that really should not have been losing to, and their European performance just wasn't good enough. That was a big disappointment going out when they did, and I think Erik ten Hag needs to look back on that. And he's obviously leaving to Manchester, but the new coach Alfred Schroeder, there is some things that he's got to overhaul this summer. Defensively, they haven't been sound enough. In midfield, sometimes be a bit lax. And then up front, Sebastian Haller has finished as top goal scorer, but is he the one that they want to take forward, or is he the one that they're going to try and sell this summer? Because right now they can get a huge fee for him if they sell him. Whereas if he has a poor season next year, that's not going to happen again. So sell him while the iron's hot, really, and then bring back Brian Brobby, bring back a couple of Bergwijn to the Netherlands. Get the players that they want.
Do you think Schreuder's going to be the player to manage to do that, though, to do all these changes?
I mean, I think the jury's out because he's failed as a head coach at Hoffenheim, I think he was at. He's been assistant at Barcelona. He's been assistant at Ajax. He's went to Club Brugge. He's done really well there. He's won the title then, and when they were quite far behind St. Gallen, but I know it goes to playoffs, and then they ended up winning it for that. So I think he's done a great job there. But the jury's out on him. You know, it's going to be difficult to replace somebody like Ten Hag, who has done such a great job since he's been Ajax coach. But I think that just winning the title this year kind of eases the pressure on Schreuder a bit. If Ten Hag had gone out, having got Ajax to the quarterfinals, semi-finals of the Champions League again, winning the cup, the league, there would have been Schreuder would have come on and with a much harder job on his hands. Whereas I think there's just a bit of disappointment around the season around Ajax, and yes, they need a technical manager. The squad's going to get overhauled this summer. Then Schreuder needs to kick on from there. So he's got a big job on his hands, but I think if Ajax back him and give him the players that he wants and needs, then they will start next season as favourites again. And surely they're not going to drop the points that they did this season against clubs such as the Go Ahead Eagles were taking points off them, like the Canberras and stuff like that. So it's hard to pinpoint what happened to Ajax because they seem to. It's an Ajax factor I've talked about years ago. Is that they seem to just take their eye off the ball against teams that they should win against. But I want to see. I think it's a big summer for them because I want to see what they're going to do with the money that they have. Who's going to leave? Who's going to stay? Because I think there's going to be 4, 5, 6 players that do go. Then it's just going to be who comes in. Do they get Bergwijn? Do they get Robbie back? Do they sign the midfielders that they need to replace the likes of Gravenberg? Does Alvarez leave? Does Martinez leave? Does Tagliafico go? What do you do about when does he stay as a starter? Does Timber go? Because there's enough interest in him. What do you do about the goalkeeper situation? There's so many question marks around the squad at the moment. It's a huge summer ahead for them. But Ten Hag leaves having won the league title. It's a passable season, not a great one for me. He'll always dine on the fact that he took Ajax to the semi-finals of the Champions League. But if Ajax are going to do that again, then you really, really need to improve the squad. And it's going to be hard to do that after lose as many players as they could this summer with clubs looking at Gravenberg. Anthony is another one I've not mentioned. Apparently he's wanted by about 5 or 6 clubs this summer. How would Ajax replace all them without somebody like Mark Overmars there? Is Hamstra and Huntelaar there? But are they going to do the deals that Overmars did? It's intriguing to see. I think if I was an Ajax fan, I'd be excited and a bit nervous about the summer ahead.
But also not worried because they've been so good in the past few years. They've enjoyed that. There can't be this expectation that it'll always be the same, that they'll always reach the semi-finals of the Champions League and such. So they should be excited that they can achieve some of those things again, that they can continue to try and win the league. But also to bring through some younger players as well. They want to see 1 or 2 really make that first team again, like this season, like in previous years where we had De Ligt and De Jong. But can Schreuder do it? He's got so many things to think about, so many things to do, and they've chosen him to do it. I think the comment about Hoffenheim, I saw this online actually, that someone disagreed with the sentiment that he didn't do so well, because I think he finished 7th with that team, and they said that was actually about right for what he was given, the cards he was dealt. And people were doubtful about his time at Bruges, but actually he has gone on to win the league against a surprise team that were doing so well. Bruges could turn it around, and they've won it. So maybe he can handle those big occasions, those big matches, and dig deep, because it's going to be so close as a three horse title race next season. And PSV are also going to go through lots of changes. The big talking point, Mike, I think, is whether Cody Gakpo stays or leaves. With the World Cup coming up in 6 months' time, like I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, what does he do?
I'd love to see him stay and kick on next season under somebody like Van Nistelrooy. But I can definitely see him going as well. I think that the clubs that are lining up from it's somebody like Arsenal, for me, wouldn't be my first choice. I'd rather see him go to somebody like a Bayern Munich or somebody that's going to be fighting for, I don't know, a league title or Champions League. There's only a few months ago that I was writing an article that Manchester City, Liverpool, all these clubs wanted them. And now it's Arsenal that's one that's getting mostly linked for 40 million move. Do I think he's 100% ready for the Premier League? That's a question mark for me. I think we've commented it before. I think you've said it before in the podcast that in some of the big games that PSV have played, he hasn't really shown up. I think it was the one against Leicester. He didn't exactly put in his best performance. So I think he could do with another year in the Eredivisie, maybe kick on, play a full season next year without any injuries, finish near his top goal scorer, get double figures for goals, double figures for assists, and then move on because he'd be ready then. Establish himself as a Netherlands player, and then he could be every club in Europe going from if he had a successful year. But I think
it's not doing no harm, is it?
No, it wouldn't at all. I think he does need another year in the Eredivisie to kick on. I think that leaving this summer is a risk. I think he's talented enough to do it in the Premier League. I think he's talented enough to do it in any league, but I think this summer is a risk given the fact that the World Cup's coming up and there's such a number of players that Van Gaal could pick for those two spots up front. If Gakpo goes somewhere, doesn't play, gets benched, then he could lose the spot easily. So it's a question mark, but I'd love to see him stay for another year at PSV, especially because I think that they really do have a chance at winning the title next year if Van Nistelrooy comes in and they get a couple of players in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with Gakpo staying, that would make the job an awful lot easier for Van Nistelrooy. We will be talking about finals in around a week's time in the run-up to the Europa Conference League final. We won't be talking too much about them today, but they did lose out to FC Twente. Just really wanted to touch upon them, finishing fourth under Ron Jans. For me, Ron Jans has been the manager of the season in the Eredivisie. He deserves that. Wow, what a season they've had. They've got some good players, but did they expect to finish fourth? I'm not so sure.
Yeah, I think he's done a terrific job with the squad that he has. I think it's a good squad. It's got some good young players in there with some good experience, like Van Wilswinkel up front, Vlap in midfield, bringing in players like Sadilek. He's had an excellent season. Then Zaruki in midfield as well has been great. I think it's all over the pitch. The strange thing is they sold a goalkeeper to PSV Eindhoven, but they actually improved in goal. So it's like the squad that they've established for this season has been great. And I think they've pushed on, whereas somebody like AZ Alkmaar, who you thought would be that top four place, have gone backwards. So Twente have really improved, and I think he's done excellent to get them back to where they should be, because this is a club, that should be fighting for top four and should be up there challenging for the title like they were years ago before it all sort of fell apart. So it's good to see them back in Europe, and I hope that they can strengthen this summer instead of lose players, because you need that for the coefficient that they're going to go into the Conference League. We need them to be a team that's going to challenge in the group stages like all the teams that have this year have. So yeah, it's good for the Eredivisie that we have Twente back performing well, and let's hope the club can push on this summer as well.
I agree with you, Mike. I think it's great to see them back in Europe. Let's hope this time they don't get knocked out by another, I think it was a team from Azerbaijan or Luxembourg the last time they played in Europe. It was something pretty tragic. Hoping for better days, much like this season. So let's talk about the Netherlands. Louis van Gaal has made his latest selection, and there are a few weird choices. Who are they, Mike, and why on earth are they in there? I know you wrote a piece on Football-Oranje about one of them, but do tell us more.
Yeah, I think the biggest surprise, the weirdest selection is Vincent Janssen's back for the first time since 2017. He is in the provisional squad for the Netherlands national team, given the fact that at one point I agreed that I really loved Vincent Janssen. You see, when he came through at AZ, I was like, this guy's great. I really supported him when he was at Tottenham. I thought that he made the wrong move, going somewhere where Harry Kane was. But I think he became a bit of a joke there, and I thought it was unwarranted. And his confidence went down and down and down. But he always did well for Netherlands. I always thought when he played for Netherlands, he did well. He scored 7 goals and 17 caps. And then for some reason, at the age of 25, he decided that he wanted to go to Mexico. And for Monterrey, I think he's played something like 93 times, and he's only scored about 23 goals. So he's not exactly ripping it up in Mexico. This season, he scored, I think, 3 in 28 games. Granted, 2 in his last 2, but 3 goals in 28 games in the Mexican League isn't exactly numbers that would pinpoint you out to be in the Netherlands national team. It's a strange one. He's had an injury hit year. I think even Monterrey fans would be shocked to see him in a squad, given the fact that he's barely played well for them. I know he scored a couple of goals, and I think that Monterrey have had a poor season. I think a couple of years ago they were winning the title. I think this year I've seen it in the table they were about 7th. I know the Mexican League works differently, has stages, but I don't think they've done well this season. I don't think Jansen's done well at all. To see him in the national team is a shock. And yeah, it doesn't really scoring goals for Ajax, or even Joshua Zirkzee, who's doing well for Anderlecht. Why not give one of the youngsters a go instead of 27-year-old striker who's been playing Mexico for the past 5 years and hardly doing well. But you've got to say that when I put it out on Twitter, there was a lot of people shouting and screaming, saying that Louis van Gaal's lost his mind and saying it's a joke and his selections are a joke. But we're unbeaten under Louis van Gaal. So, if we're losing every week or every international period and Netherlands were playing terrible and, he was making strange decisions on the pitch, I'd say, yeah, it's granted that Van Gaal's making strange decisions. But for Netherlands to be unbeaten since he's come in, be heading into a World Cup group that they should be winning, they drew with Germany last time out. They beat a good Denmark side in a very entertaining game. I think the criticism's a bit unheralded, but yeah, Vincent Janssen's a strange one. And I wrote about it because the only reason I can think that he's done it is he basically said last week that he wants a striker, he needs a striker.
Yeah.
Will Vincent Janssen be named in the actual squad? Probably not. The only reason I can think that Van Gaal's done it is because he likes to do things like this. He likes to make short decisions and make it out that he's some sort of like mastermind, master over some strange decision that nobody else would have done, but only he could have done it. Like when he called up Mark Flecken for the squad, he said, "I've selected a goalkeeper nobody would have ever heard of in this room. He was playing at Freiburg in the Bundesliga, who are challenging for a Champions League spot, but he made it out that he was the first one to discover him and that he's brought him in from nowhere." And I think he's doing this he did it with Gravenberg as well, saying that the only reason he was playing well at Ajax was because he dropped him at the national team and had a word with him. So he does like to have these little moments where he does something a bit strange. And I think that's what he's doing with Janssen. He's saying, we need a striker. I'll call him in. I won't actually put him into the squad, but I'll let him know that he's in the radar. Maybe Janssen then push for a move back to Europe. If he then comes back to Europe, starts scoring goals, then Van Gaal can pick him in the World Cup squad and say, look what I've done. I put it into his head that he can still be a Netherlands player. He came back to Europe, scored a lot of goals, and now he's back in the World Cup squad. I'm a genius. Look at me. So I think that's what is going on here. I can't see him being picked in the squad. Also because of the fact that he's already said that he won't play against Belgium because he's getting married the day afterwards in America. So it'd be a bit strange to pick him to then not play in the first game, to then come back after having a wedding where he's probably had a big party. But yeah, so for me it's a strange one when you could have picked Brian Brobby, could have picked Joshua Zirkzee.
I think Brobby was probably the most sensible choice because he is someone for the future, and he hasn't been like brilliant for Ajax, but you can see how he'd fit in and how he's got his different abilities on a football pitch.
Yeah, if you're looking for somebody that's going to make an impact from, say, the bench, where you've got Memphis and Bergwijn, and then you bring on somebody like Brobby, who defence is just like, even when they was playing in the Champions League last year or in Europe last year, defence has struggled when Brian Brobby came on for Ajax. Vincent Janssen, maybe not. So I think that he's missed a trick there, but maybe, again, it's only a provisional squad. He could change it all again in 2 weeks' time when he makes his final decision, but it is a strange one to pick Janssen.
I wouldn't have thought that he would now go and pick some different players in October or whenever the next friendlies are, probably September, October. And because of that, I don't see why he didn't pick someone like Bobby, because that would then say to me that he shut the door on him and he'd then not get into the squad ahead of the World Cup. But you wouldn't want to look at someone like that, and then if they score lots of goals, another loan period for Ajax next season, that he then would be in the World Cup squad. It's like I wouldn't expect him to call up Thijs Starlinger, but if he gets a move to the Eredivisie and scores, say, I don't know, 15 goals in the first half of the season for RZ, then he's got to be within a possibility of having a call up for the Netherlands. Because Van Gaal even dropped the hint in, didn't he? Like you said, he said he wanted another striker for the Netherlands. Wasn't it he dropped in a couple of rude things, didn't he, at the awards ceremony for the CONCACAF Eredivisie? Because he said, first of all, starting that looking for a striker for the Netherlands, which I'm sure would have pleased a lot of the other players that are trying to get a place in the team. But also, then didn't he also remark about the RZ goalkeeper and say something like, "Oh yeah, well, you should move back to RZ, looking at the goalkeeper that's already there at the moment."
Yeah. I mean, he's a character. You love it. I mean, he makes these comments. It's great. And to be fair, he's not wrong with what he's saying. We do need a striker for Netherlands. And they said, do need a new goalkeeper. And that guy that got the word, Nikolai, probably would do a good job for him. So, I mean, at least he says it, and at least it's truth. So, I mean, fair play to him.
It's a character. He's so old now. He doesn't care what anyone thinks.
Yeah. But yeah, I agree. Like, these are the last games that you can really experiment with. Yes, the National League is important, and you don't want to get relegated from the group, etc. But I mean, he could have called in a couple of them just to say, like, right, I'm going to take a look at you. You know, I've banged the drum from the past few months, but the fact that Joey Veerman's not there baffles me. When you get something like Jordy Classes in there, if you're going to drop Gini Wijnaldum, which he's done, which is fair, why not give somebody like Joey Veerman a go just to see what he can do? If it doesn't work out for him, then fair play. But with his stats in the Eredivisie this season, what he's been doing since he went to PSV, I think he's one that you take a look at to see what he can do, because I think he has something a bit different to the Netherlands midfield that might be missing there. So I'm surprised at that. But overall, the squad is basically what you think it would be. Obviously, minus the fact that Jansen's there and minus the fact that he actually dropped Wijnaldum. And it was good to see that Rick Karsdorp got a call up after months and months of people going, why is Rick Karsdorp not there? And he finally is there. So we can see if he makes the cut. But yeah, it's just a shame that we're not going to see any debuts in the summer. And it's always nice to see like one or two names disappear and get a chance. So that's a shame, but I'm still looking forward to all the games. I think it's going to be 4 good games in June. Get to see what Netherlands are doing. Hopefully they can come out on top in all 4 and, be full steam ahead to the World Cup.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the games now. Belgium away, Wales away, Poland at home, Wales at home. All within the space of 12 days. There's 4 games. 12? Maybe it's on the maths wrong. Not very long, at the beginning of June. And I've got the team in front of me. There are a few surprises, like you say. It would be good, though, to see Joe Veerman come in for David Klaassen. Klaassen, maybe he's scored a few goals lately. Maybe that's why Van Gaal has chosen him to be in the team. Because Klaassen is a more limited player. Veerman can offer more on the ball. But I guess he likes to have a player from deep, like Koopmeiners or De Jong. Whereas Veerman likes to play a little further up. PSV have played Veerman as an 8 this season. And I do actually prefer him in a 10 or out wide, because he can just impact the game a little bit more. Then with the defenders, it's good to see Karsdorp in, but I can't see Dumfries getting dropped. And if you've got Karsdorp in the squad, I hope that means Hartlepool gets dropped in the final squad. Yeah, there's some players here that we certainly need to see more of, like Bergwijn or Danjuma, Cody Gakpo. They're players I think attacking-wise we need to see a bit more from in terms of their contributions to the side. Bergwijn did it so well last time. Can he do it again to be more consistent? Because then we've got a second striker to play with, Memphis Depay, unless Van Gaal just simply doesn't see that and he sees somebody coming through between now and November.
Yeah, because, I mean, you can say that Van Gaal's a bit of a hypocrite for the fact that he says that players have to play to get into my squad. he drops Van Wijnaldum on that basis, but then calls up Bergwijn, who can't get more than a couple of minutes a week for Tottenham. But because Bergwijn did so well last time out, you can't say that he doesn't deserve it. Yeah. So we'd see what he can do again. Danjuma's currently injured for Villarreal. I don't think he's played in the past 3 or 4 games for them. So I don't know if he'll be back in time, which would be a bit of a blow. But it's good to have Gakpo back because he didn't play in the last 2 games. And same with Timber. He didn't play. I don't know if he's going to be back in time, but it'd be good to see them to get involved more, especially Gakpo. Even though I don't think he really excels in a central role for PSG. I know he played in it again today. He's done it for parts of this season. But I'd be intrigued to see what he can do in a 3-5-2. So yeah, there's still some things that Van Gaal can work with, and some of the options that are coming back for these games that will be intriguing to see. Who does he pick and goal with Sillerson being back in the fold as well?
Yeah.
Does he stick with Fleck or go with him? So yeah, there is. And what does he do with left back? Because Malacia, Wijndal's been playing out of his skin recently, even though AZ have been quite poor. I think Wijndal's been good. So will he get a shout, having not played in the last 2 games? So there's still a lot for Van Gaal to think about. What does he do with his formation that he's determined to play? What does he do with the midfield? Yeah, the midfield for me is poor. Picking Klaassen, whose Till's not exactly been in great form recently, compared to what he was at the start of the season. Atalanta have fallen off a cliff in Serie A. So we need to hope that Koop Miners brings his top form when he comes. And then you got, Frankie de Jong, who's got so much speculation around him right now. What's his head going to be like when he plays these games? So yeah, there's question marks around that. Gravenberch isn't there again. So you would have just liked to see somebody that was so settled like Joey Veerman coming in and with a point to prove, because I think he could have excelled with that. But we're not going to see that this time. I think that it's a shame, but I think that we're going to have to wait till Koeman comes in to see Joey Veerman in there. Because I don't think after this period, unless there's any big shocks, as you say, at the start of next season, he'll make any drastic changes to his squad ahead of the World Cup, because he's not really had that much time to see them. So I think that this was his chance to experiment with a few players. So it's a shame that we've not really got that many new faces in there just to take a look at.
Yeah, I agree. And it'd be interesting to hear from people who are listening or watching this what they think of a squad and who they would have liked to have seen in the squad included ahead of the 4 games, which it offers you another chance to put players in the firing line, see whether they can give you what you need in a certain formation. Van Gaal maybe could have just picked a couple of different players to look at something a bit different. But good to see that he dropped Wijnaldum. That's what you want to see, that because it was the last chance for him to kind of do that, I suppose, to sort of send a message to Wijnaldum. And maybe now he'll get a move in the summer so that he can play more next season. Yeah, I think it would be great if people could comment along with what they thought of the squad from Van Gaal. Also with the Eredivisie final day, how did your club get on? And give us a like if you enjoyed this podcast. Anything to add, Mike, before we leave today? And of course, we'll be talking more about Feyenoord soon and the upcoming games.
Yeah, the only thing for everyone to look out for is the fact that the Under-17 European Championship starts tomorrow, which will be Monday. The Netherlands have won it the last 2 times in a row, and they have another insanely talented squad this time around. So be intriguing to see how they get on over there, see if they can win that tournament for a 3rd time in a row. First ever nation to do that, if they do. So that'd be intriguing to see if the next generation of talents coming through are as good as people say they are. So yeah, I'll be watching that over the next week or so, hoping for some good results. And then yeah, it'll be intriguing to see how Feyenoord get on. And then we've got international period. So even though the season's come to an end, still got plenty to look forward to with the relegation playoffs and European playoffs in there as well. So still loads to look forward to, especially ahead of what will be a very, very busy summer of transfers with so many Dutch internationals up for sale. So I'm sure we'll be talking about that in future podcasts as well, if Frankie de Jong does eventually move, or the likes of Memphis, Danjuma, where they are going to go this summer. So yes, intriguing times ahead.
Yeah, definitely. I think we'll be going to sleep over this summer. Feels like this just got started. We've begun the run up to the World Cup now. So yeah, we won't be going anywhere at the end of the Eredivisie regular season, but that's about it. And everything else is still alive and kicking. So if you enjoyed this, do give it a like. Subscribe if you're new. Comment along. What did you think of the World Cup? Sorry, not the World Cup squad. The latest call-ups from Louis van Gaal. And if you enjoyed it, do stick around. There's plenty more to come from us. But bye from us at Football-Oranje for now.